Let's bring in Zsuzsanna Szelenyi, Director of the CEU Democracy Institute Leadership Academy and a Senior Fellow at the Central European Policy Analysis. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, the landslide was quite extraordinary, wasn't it? I mean, how do you explain this huge turnaround from the last election?
Well, it was pretty clear that the turnout would be high because in the last 2 years, there was finally one strong political alternative leader for Orban. For 14 years, a political opposition was very fragmented, and despite the fact that they could collaborate at elections, it was a kind of crisis of leadership. So this was the vacuum Magyar could fill in the last 2 years. He rallied a lot of people of all kind of ideology behind who wanted Orban to leave, and I think that was a critical factor. Also, many economic problems, moral issues and scandals broke out in the government. So there was plenty of reason why eventually Hungarians decided, but this kind of filling the leadership crisis were an essential part of the story.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing people say Russians go home, chanting that a lot today. I mean, obviously I'm not there, but I hear that it was being chanted a lot, and that really speaks to the overriding issue that they felt that the country had moved too far away from Europe, I think, and too close to Russia. So there's going to be a turnaround there.
Absolutely. I mean, this was a huge risk I think Orban introduced more than 10 years ago, changing Hungary's consensual foreign policy paradigm, which was European transatlantic since the regime change for the last 30 years. But he wanted to be part of the leader of the world. And it was quite a lot of hubris. He wanted to put himself between East and West. He started to introduce these narratives like 15 years ago. And this also meant getting closer to Russia, Putin, which was at the same time radicalizing. I mean, a Putin of 15 years ago was different than like 3 years ago. But it was a huge risk because he really lost the natural path of a small Central European country. And of course, this balancing dance between EU partners, being European Union member, and also collaborating with Russia, with Turkey, with China, with whoever in the world, I think it was just too risky, and it didn't work out for him.
He was very close to Trump. Is Peter Magyar going to be, what's his view of Trump and the US relationship?
I think the TISA administration will follow basically a more traditional transatlantic relationship, which also means they will make efforts to remain reasonable relationship with the United States. I think what exactly it will look like, we don't know, but Magyar earlier made comment that he is ready to collaborate with the Trump administration. And also, actually, J.D. Vance, when he was here in Hungary a couple of days ago, he also, despite campaigning for Orban for 2 days, he mentioned that if the turnout, if the election outcome will be something different, the United States will work with another Hungarian government as well.
Magyar was very close to Orban, wasn't he, originally, very much at the centre of the party. Is he just an opportunist who saw a gap here, or has he really changed?
Well, I think leaders are born when there is an opportunity. I have a very strong conviction about that. And what kind of leader as a governor Magyar will be, we will have to see. What we saw that he made an incredible courageous step, because leaving Fidesz, which is a highly disciplined, almost like an army party, it was a huge risk for him. And we saw that from the very first moment, there was a continuous and massive, robust mayor campaign about that, which was he was surprisingly resistant. Actually, people just didn't bother themselves. So, but I was once Fidesz member, and I also left long ago, and it was very painful to leave. A political party is a community. It's a lot of friends, a colleagues. So I think Magyar. I don't know him, but I personally, but I'm pretty sure he went through maybe years of frustration before he left Fidesz and took this very risky step, which actually turned out pretty well for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So Orban was in power, wasn't he, for 16 years? He was, an authoritarian leader. Many people outside the country saw him as, at least, and he made a lot of changes to the country. So he's going to have an impact. There's going to be a legacy there, isn't there, going forward? How would you define that?
So Hungary will face formidable problems in the coming years, and not just urgent problems like basically the Hungarian government coffers are emptied. Hungary is facing economic problems. There was stagnation for 3 years, so it will be very complicated to govern without money, especially when the world economy is also so unstable. So this is one. The other thing is that Orban built a state. He used the term illiberal state, which basically disrespected the liberal element of a state, something like the separation of state powers, the neutrality of the state, a pluralist profile of political organizations and civil society. So there was a huge concentration of power and a lot of informality. So the whole government structure, even the constitutional structure, should be revised in Hungary, which will not happen very fast. And also, despite Magyar has a constitutional majority, he should do it in a different way, because one problem with Orban was that he did it by one party. So Magyar cannot afford. I think Hungarians will not tolerate this any longer, that one party, even with such a big legitimacy, electoral legitimacy, should make constitution on their own. So I think they have to figure out, these parties should figure out a new methodology, more participative, more consultative way of how a future, more pluralist profile of a Hungarian state should look like. And so these are plenty of things. And of course, Orban has a whole series of autocratic holdovers. Moreover,
Yes.
Viktor Orban will still be Hungary's prime minister at least for 1 month, and there's a plenty of opportunity for him to create all kind of problems for an upcoming government.
Yeah, let's see what he does that. Zsuzsanna Szelenyi, thank you so much for joining us.